Welcome to The Explainer. You know, if you're learning Spanish, there's a really good chance you've stumbled across the double negative and just paused. Your brain tells you, wait, that can't be right. It feels like it breaks a basic rule of grammar we've known our whole lives. But here's the thing. It's not a broken rule. It's just a different rule. And once you see the logic behind it, everything just clicks. So let's look at a classic example you've probably heard a million times. No quiero nada. Seems straightforward, right? But if you're coming from English, your brain probably does a little backflip trying to translate that word for word. Because literally it translates to I don't want nothing. And in English, that sentence is a mess. It's confusing, it's grammatically incorrect, and it feels like it should mean the exact opposite of what the person is trying to say. So what is going on here? Well, here's the absolute heart of the matter. In English, it's drilled into us. Two negatives cancel each other out and make a positive. It's like math. But to really get Spanish negation, you have to take that rule, put it in a box, and set it aside. Because Spanish is playing a completely different game. So if Spanish isn't about cancellation, then what is the rule? It's actually a really simple but powerful idea. It's all about reinforcement. And getting this one little shift in thinking is the key that unlocks this entire concept. And this, right here, lays it all out. In English, we see don't and nothing, and our brain does the math. Negative plus negative equals positive. But in Spanish, nope, there's no cancellation. That second negative word doesn't reverse the first one. It actually jumps in to help it, to make that no even more powerful and absolute. Here's a great way to picture it. Imagine the first negative word, like no, builds a brick wall. Now, every other negative word that comes after it, like nada or nunca, doesn't knock the wall down, it just adds another brick, making that wall of no taller, stronger, and more definite. Okay, so we've got the new logic down. Reinforcement, not cancellation. Now let's get the actual tools you'll need to start building these sentences yourself. And here they are, the key players in this game. The best way to think about these is as pairs of opposites. If you have a positive sentence, you'll use a word from the left column, like algo, for something. But the second you make that sentence negative by adding no, you have to swap out algo for its negative partner, nada. It's like a mandatory substitution. And that same rule applies to all of these pairs. Now, once you get these pairs down, it gets even easier. Seriously, there are basically only two simple formulas you need to know to build almost any negative sentence you can think of in Spanish. Let's break down the two patterns. Option 1, you can just put your negative word, like nunca, right before the verb. So, nunca como espinaca. Simple. Option 2 is more of a tag team. You put no before the verb, and then you put the other negative word after the verb. No como espinaca nunca. Now, what's really important here is that both of these sentences mean the exact same thing. I never eat spinach. One isn't more correct than the other, it's just a style choice. All right, we've got the big picture logic and the basic sentence structures. Now let's dive a little deeper and look at a few of the finer points. You know, the little details that can sometimes trip people up. Okay, this one is huge. When you use the word for none, that's ninguno, it's almost always going to be singular. And you might ask, why? Well, the logic is actually pretty cool. You're saying you have not even one of something. And, well, if you don't even have one, you definitely can't have more than one, right? Check out this everyday situation. In English, we ask with the plural, are there any questions? But the proper response in Spanish is no hay ninguna pregunta. Singular. You're literally saying, no, there is not one single question. See how that logic works? Okay. This next little piece of information is absolutely critical because it determines which negative word you have to use. It all comes down to whether the thing you're talking about is a count noun or a mass noun. So, first up, count nouns. These are the easy ones. They are exactly what they sound like, things you can actually count. 1 apple, 2 friends, 3 books. If you can stick a number in front of it, it's a count noun. Simple. And then we have mass nouns. These are the things that are more like a substance or a concept. You can't really separate them into individual units. You don't say 1 money or 2 waters, right? You talk about an amount of it. That's a mass noun. So here's the payoff. This is why we made that distinction. If you're talking about a count noun, like friends, amigos, you use ningún. But if you're talking about a mass noun, like money, dinero, you have to switch to a totally different phrase, nada de. So you'd say, no tengo nada de dinero.
which literally means I have nothing of money. It's a key difference.
So you might be sitting there wondering, okay, but where did this whole reinforcement idea even come from? Why is Spanish like this? Well, for that, we need to hop in a time machine and take a quick trip back to ancient Rome. The backstory here is actually pretty fascinating. It all goes back to a Latin word, nec, which meant and not. Over hundreds and hundreds of years, as Latin evolved, that little ness sound at the beginning became the genetic building block for a whole family of negative words. And you can still see its DNA today in Spanish words like ninguno and me. It just goes to show, this isn't some random rule. It's the result of thousands of years of language evolution. Okay, let's bring this all home. We've taken apart the logic, we've looked at the tools, we've even dug into the history. Now it's time to put it all together and really lock in this new way of thinking. So, if you're going to walk away with anything, let it be these three things. Number one, and this is the big one, Spanish negatives reinforce. They don't cancel. Remember the brick wall. Number two, you've got those two super simple sentence patterns to work with. And number three, always ask yourself, is this a count noun or a mass noun? That'll tell you which word to use. And honestly, this might be the most powerful idea of all. The real goal here isn't just to memorize a bunch of random grammar rules. It's about understanding a completely different system of logic, a different way of expressing ideas. And when you finally get that underlying logic, the rules stop feeling like rules. They just start making sense. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? This idea that grammar is just a system of logic? Well, that applies to everything. So what other parts of language that seem totally weird or confusing are really just a different but equally valid way of thinking about the world? It's a pretty cool question to keep in your back pocket as you keep learning.